The Middle East in 2025 looks very different from just 2 years ago. The old lines in the sand have been washed away by a tide of conflict and diplomacy. A fundamental shift has occurred in the region's balance of power. The simple divisions of the past are gone. We no longer see a clear split between an anti-Iran bloc and Iran's allies. Instead, a more complex web of relationships is forming. Countries are now choosing their own paths. They are making decisions based on their own security and economic needs. This new reality is reshaping alliances across the entire region, creating both new challenges and new opportunities for peace. At the heart of this transformation are the Gulf Arab states. Led by Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, these nations have changed their strategic direction. They once saw Israel as a key partner against Iran. Now, they see the situation differently. The destructive war in Gaza and Israel's growing military power have made them worry. They fear being caught in a wider regional war. This fear has pushed them away from confrontation and toward dialogue. They are now trying to build bridges with old enemies. Their main goal is to protect their ambitious economic plans, which depend on a stable and peaceful neighborhood. This new landscape has created a vacuum of leadership, and Saudi Arabia has stepped in to fill it. The kingdom has moved from being a participant in conflicts to being the region's primary peacemaker. Riyadh is now the go-to capital for nations seeking to resolve disputes. It is mediating between enemies and helping to rebuild war-torn countries. This new role is a major change for a country once known for its quiet, behind-the-scenes diplomacy. Now, Saudi Arabia is openly guiding the region toward a future it hopes will be defined by cooperation, not conflict. The world is watching to see if this new approach will succeed. The old certainties are gone, replaced by a fluid and unpredictable environment. The United States, a longtime power in the region, is also changing its approach. Alliances that once seemed solid are now being questioned. Old enemies are finding common ground. Former friends are looking at each other with caution. This period of change began with the shocking events of late 2023. It has since accelerated, driven by military campaigns and bold diplomatic moves. The story of the Middle East in 2025 is the story of how these powerful nations are learning to navigate a new and uncertain world, all in the pursuit of stability. The path to this new Middle East began on October 7, 2023. On that day, Hamas launched a major attack on Israel. This event triggered a devastating war in Gaza. It sent shockwaves across the region and the world. The conflict shattered the illusion of a stable status quo. It forced every country to reevaluate its position and its alliances. The war showed the Gulf states just how quickly the region could descend into chaos. It made them realize that their security could not be guaranteed by military strength alone. The violence and destruction underscored the urgent need for a different path forward, one based on diplomacy. Following the Hamas attack, Israel launched a powerful military response. This response extended beyond Gaza. In September 2024, Israeli forces killed Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, in a strike in Beirut. This was a major blow to the powerful Lebanese group. 1 month later, in October 2024, Israel also killed Hamas's top leader in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar. These actions weakened Iran's network of allied groups, often called the Axis of Resistance. While these were military victories for Israel, they also raised the temperature in the region to a boiling point. The fear of an all-out war between Israel and Iran became very real for everyone. The changes were not just limited to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. A stunning development took place in Syria. In December 2024, the long-standing regime of Bashar al-Assad collapsed. Rebel forces took control of Damascus, ending decades of his family's rule. A new leader, Ahmed al-Shara, came to power. He immediately looked to Saudi Arabia for support to rebuild his shattered country. This event dramatically weakened Iran's influence in Syria, as Assad had been one of its closest allies. It also created a new opportunity for Gulf states to help shape the future of a key Arab nation, pulling it back into their orbit. Amid these military and political upheavals, the United States also made a surprising move. In early 2025, President Donald Trump began a new diplomatic push. He visited the Middle East, meeting with Syria's new leader and lifting sanctions on the country. His trip notably did not include a stop in Israel. His administration also signed a ceasefire agreement directly with the Houthi movement in Yemen. These actions signaled a major shift in American policy. The U.S. was now prioritizing direct talks and diplomatic solutions, even with groups it once considered its enemies. This new American approach added another layer of change to an already transformed region. The Gulf states, especially Saudi Arabia and the UAE, once viewed Iran as their greatest threat. They worried about its nuclear program and its support for armed groups across the region. This shared concern led them to build a quiet but strong partnership with Israel. They believed that working with Israel was the best way to contain Iran. This thinking shaped their foreign policy for years. They saw the region as a clear battleground between two sides. One side was led by them and their Western partners. The other side was led by Iran. This simple view guided their actions and their alliances. However, the brutal war in Gaza changed their perspective completely. They watched as the conflict threatened to spill over into a massive regional war. They saw how an unchecked Israel, with its powerful military, could act without restraint. This made them realize that a dominant, aggressive Israel could be just as dangerous to regional stability as Iran. They feared being dragged into a devastating conflict that would destroy their economies. Their ambitious plans for the future, like Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030, depend entirely on peace and stability. A war between Israel and Iran would put all of their dreams at risk. This fear of a wider war pushed the Gulf states to recalibrate their relationships. They decided that balancing their ties was a smarter strategy than choosing sides. They needed to have good relations with both Iran and Israel to prevent a catastrophic conflict. In April 2025, a top Saudi defense official met with his Iranian counterpart in Tehran. This meeting would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier. It showed that the Gulf states were now serious about building a security dialogue with Iran. They believed that talking to Iran was the only way to reduce tensions and find common ground on regional security issues. The goal of this new approach is simple: stability. The Gulf states want a predictable and peaceful environment so they can focus on economic development. They no longer see the region in black and white terms. Instead, they see a complex network of interests that must be carefully managed. They believe that by engaging with all major players, including Iran, they can reduce the risk of war. This change of heart is not based on a new friendship with Iran. It is a pragmatic choice based on their own self-interest. They have concluded that confrontation is too costly, and that diplomacy is the only path to a secure and prosperous future. During his first term in office, President Donald Trump's approach to Iran was clear. He pursued a policy of maximum pressure. He pulled the United States out of the 2015 nuclear deal. He imposed harsh economic sanctions on Tehran. The goal was to cripple Iran's economy and force it to change its behavior. This strategy was strongly supported by Israel and some Gulf states at the time. They believed that only extreme pressure could stop Iran's nuclear ambitions and its regional activities. This confrontational stance defined the relationship between the US and Iran for years, bringing them close to military conflict on several occasions. However, upon returning to the presidency, Trump has adopted a very different strategy. His administration is now focused on diplomacy with Iran. The White House is actively pursuing a new nuclear deal. This represents a complete reversal of his previous policy. The main reason for this change is a desire to avoid another costly war in the Middle East. The Trump administration has realized that the maximum pressure campaign did not achieve its main goals. It did not stop Iran's nuclear program, and it brought the region to the brink of a major conflict. A new war would be a huge drain on American resources and attention. This new focus on diplomacy has been welcomed and encouraged by the Gulf states. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Oman, and Qatar are playing a crucial role as mediators. They are facilitating the talks between the United States and Iran. They believe that a new nuclear agreement is essential for regional security. They see it as the best way to place limits on Iran's nuclear activities. A deal would also reduce the chances of a military strike on Iran by either the US or Israel. For the Gulf states, a successful diplomatic outcome is the key to lowering tensions and creating a more stable environment for everyone. Israel, however, is strongly opposed to this new American approach. Israeli leaders see a new nuclear deal as a lifeline for Iran. They believe it would give Tehran economic relief without truly stopping its nuclear ambitions. Israel continues to push the United States for military action to destroy Iran's nuclear facilities. This has created a major disagreement between the US and its closest ally in the region. President Trump's decision to pursue diplomacy with Iran, even without Israel's support, shows how much American priorities in the Middle East have shifted. The US is now charting a course based on its own interests. which it defines as avoiding war. In this new Middle Eastern landscape, Saudi Arabia has emerged as the indispensable power broker. The kingdom is no longer just a major player in the region's economy. It is now central to its politics and security. For years, Saudi Arabia was known for its quiet and cautious diplomacy. It preferred to work behind the scenes. But today, Riyadh is taking a bold and public role in shaping the region's future. It has become the main mediator for resolving the most difficult conflicts. Nations from the West and the East now look to Saudi Arabia to help guide the region away from war and toward peace. Saudi Arabia's new role is most visible in the post-conflict planning for countries like Gaza, Syria, and Lebanon. The kingdom is expected to lead the international efforts to rebuild these shattered places. But its role goes beyond just providing money. Riyadh is actively involved in finding political solutions. In Lebanon, for example, Saudi Arabia's support was key to the election of Joseph Aoun as president in January 2025. This helped to end a long political stalemate in the country. In Syria, the new government is looking directly to Riyadh for political and economic support. Saudi Arabia is using its influence to stabilize its neighbors and reduce the space for conflict. This new diplomatic activism is driven by Saudi Arabia's own national interests. The kingdom's ambitious vision, 2030 plan, aims to transform its economy and society. This grand project requires decades of regional stability. A major war would be disastrous for these plans. Therefore, Saudi leaders have made conflict resolution their top priority. They are using their economic power and political influence to create a peaceful environment. This includes mediating between the United States and Iran. It also involves proposing creative solutions, such as a regional consortium for peaceful nuclear energy that would include Iran. The kingdom's position as a mediator gives it significant leverage. It is one of the few countries that has good relationships with the United States, China, and now increasingly with Iran. This unique position allows it to act as a bridge between rivals. When the United States wants to talk to Iran, it often goes through Gulf capitals. When China wants to increase its role in the region, it partners with Saudi Arabia. This central role has made the kingdom more powerful and influential than ever before. Saudi Arabia is no longer just reacting to events, it is actively shaping them, placing itself at the very heart of the new Middle East. Following the events of 2024, Israel finds itself in a position of unprecedented military strength. Its successful campaigns against Hezbollah and Hamas have significantly weakened two of its main adversaries. The collapse of the Assad regime in Syria also removed a key ally of Iran from Israel's northern border. These developments have made Israel the most dominant conventional military power in the region. Buoyed by these victories, Israel is now asserting its power more forcefully. It's expanding its military presence in areas it sees as critical to its security. This includes parts of Gaza, southern Lebanon, and even some areas within Syria. This new military dominance, however, is not seen as a positive development by many of its neighbors. The Gulf Arab states, in particular, are growing increasingly worried. They once saw Israel's military might as a useful counterweight to Iran, but now they see a powerful and assertive Israel as a potential source of instability itself. They worry that Israel, feeling confident in its strength, might take actions that could spark a wider war. The extensive destruction in Gaza served as a stark warning of what a regional conflict could look like. The Gulf states now believe that a balance of power is necessary for peace, not the dominance of any single country. Israel's current strategy is focused on preventing Iran from ever obtaining a nuclear weapon. It continues to push the United States to take military action to destroy Iran's nuclear program. Israeli leaders view the new diplomatic talks between the United States and Iran with deep suspicion. They fear that any deal will not be strong enough and will only empower their greatest enemy. This has put Israel at odds with both the United States and the Gulf states, who now see diplomacy as the best way forward. Israel's hardline stance is isolating it from the emerging regional consensus that favors de-escalation and dialogue. The growing concern about Israel's power is a key reason why Gulf states have shifted their strategy. They now support a nuclear deal with Iran partly as a way to restrain Israel. They believe that if Iran's nuclear program is limited by an international agreement, it will remove Israel's main justification for a potential military strike. This would in turn reduce the risk of a regional war that would threaten the entire Gulf. In this new era, the Gulf states are no longer willing to give Israel a blank check for its security actions. They are now actively working to create a regional security structure that limits the power of all major players, including Israel. Before the Gaza war, the idea of peace between Saudi Arabia and Israel seemed closer than ever. The United States was actively pushing for a normalization agreement. It was seen as the next logical step in the Abraham Accords, which saw other Gulf states establish ties with Israel. The main driver was a shared concern about Iran. Both Saudi Arabia and Israel saw Iran as a common threat, and a formal alliance seemed beneficial to both. The talks were progressing, and many observers expected a historic deal to be announced soon. This deal was seen as the crown jewel of a new anti-Iran alliance in the Middle East. However, the war that began in October 2023 completely changed the situation. The widespread death and destruction in Gaza made it politically impossible for Saudi Arabia to move forward with normalization. The images from the conflict inflamed public opinion across the Arab world. Any deal with Israel at that time would have been seen as a betrayal of the Palestinian people. The initial track for normalization was completely derailed. The war brought the Palestinian issue back to the center of regional politics. It reminded everyone that there could be no lasting peace in the Middle East without a just solution for the Palestinians. Now in 2025, the idea of normalization is back on the table, but the conditions have changed dramatically. Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states remain open to the idea of peace with Israel, but they have made it clear that it cannot happen in a vacuum. Riyadh has stated its main condition loudly and clearly. Normalization is only possible if it comes with the establishment of a viable Palestinian state. This is no longer just a talking point, it is a firm precondition. The Gulf states now see a two-state solution not just as a matter of justice for Palestinians, but as a necessary component of regional security. This new condition places the ball firmly in Israel's court. For normalization to proceed, Israel would have to make significant concessions on the Palestinian issue. This is a difficult prospect for the current Israeli government, which is focused on expanding its military and political control. The Gulf states' position is clear. They are willing to offer the prize of full relations with the Arab world's most important country. But the price of that prize is a genuine political future for the Palestinians. Broader peace is now viewed as part of a larger package. This package must include an end to the war, a deal with Iran, and a real path to Palestinian statehood. The Gulf states today are engaged in a complex and delicate balancing act. They are trying to maintain good relationships with multiple competing world powers. On one side is their traditional security partner, the United States. On the other is their powerful neighbor, Iran. And in the middle is Israel, a country they see as both a potential partner and a potential threat. Navigating these relationships requires immense diplomatic skill. The Gulf nations can no longer afford to be in just one camp. Their survival and prosperity depend on their ability to build bridges and manage rivalries without being forced to choose a side. The relationship with the United States remains very important. The United States is still a major military power in the region and a key economic partner. The Gulf states rely on American security guarantees and technology. However, they are also aware that American priorities are shifting. The United States is increasingly focused on challenges from China and Russia. It wants to reduce its military footprint in the Middle East. This means the Gulf states can no longer rely on the United States to solve all their security problems. They must take more responsibility for their own neighborhood. This is why they are pursuing their own diplomatic initiatives with countries like Iran. At the same time, the Gulf states are building a new relationship with Iran. This is not based on trust or friendship, but on a pragmatic understanding of shared interests. The China-brokered deal in 2023 that restored ties between Saudi Arabia and Iran was a crucial first step. It led to a halt in Houthi attacks on Gulf cities. Now they are expanding this relationship to include security talks. By engaging directly with Tehran, they hope to reduce misunderstandings and de-escalate tensions. They believe that a stable relationship with Iran is essential to preventing a regional war and ensuring the security of vital shipping lanes in the Gulf. This diplomatic dance also includes Israel. While normalization talks are now tied to the Palestinian issue, the Gulf states still see value in having a line of communication with Israel. They recognize Israel's economic and technological power. They also understand that Israel is a permanent part of the regional landscape. Their goal is to integrate Israel into a new security architecture that benefits everyone. This means balancing their support for the Palestinian cause with their desire for a stable relationship with Israel. It is a difficult path to walk, but the Gulf states believe it is the only way to achieve lasting peace and security for all. The Middle East of 2025 is a region in profound transition. The old order has crumbled, and a new one is slowly taking shape. This new order is not being imposed by outside powers. It is being built by the region's own nations, led by a newly assertive Saudi Arabia. The focus has shifted from confrontation to diplomacy, from choosing sides to balancing relationships. The primary goal for the Gulf states is stability. They are driven by the urgent need to protect their ambitious economic futures from the ravages of war. This pragmatic desire for peace is the most powerful force for positive change in the region today. This new diplomatic path is filled with challenges. The interests of the major players, the United States, Iran, Israel, and Saudi Arabia, are often in direct conflict. Israel remains deeply opposed to any deal with Iran. The United States is trying to avoid war while managing a difficult relationship with its Israeli ally. Iran must decide if it values economic integration more than its revolutionary ideology. And Saudi Arabia must skillfully manage all these competing interests to keep the peace process on track. A single miscalculation or act of aggression could unravel all the progress that has been made. Yet, despite the difficulties, there is a fragile hope for a more stable future. For the first time in a long time, the most powerful countries in the Gulf are actively working to prevent a war. They are using their immense wealth and political influence to promote dialogue and de-escalation. The discussions around a new nuclear deal with Iran, a political solution for the Palestinians, and a regional security framework are all positive signs. These diplomatic efforts, if they succeed, could create a foundation for a lasting peace. They could lead to a Middle East where nations focus on shared prosperity instead of endless conflict. The coming months will be critical. The success of this new era depends on the choices that leaders in Riyadh, Tehran, Jerusalem, and Washington will make. They face a historic opportunity to steer the region away from the brink of a devastating war. The path of diplomacy is long and difficult, but it offers the only realistic hope for a better future. The world watches, hoping that the quest for stability will triumph over the forces of division. The fragile hope for peace in the Middle East rests on the belief that shared interests can, in the end, overcome historical enmities.